Hi everyone! In today's video I want to kind of do a two-in-one. So one of the things I want to cover is I think my all-time favorite sentiment stamp, and I'll go over why I think it's so awesome. And the second thing is to show you a tip of how I use this so you could get really lots of sentiments really quickly. And then what I do with them in terms of, I'll show you a couple of projects where I've used this, and it's just a little craft hack, I suppose. So usually with so first of all, the stamp set is called, so let me show that on camera, Tiny Text, and that's the reference. It's by the wonderful Tim Holtz, by Stampers Anonymous. And like with all of, if you're familiar with Stampers Anonymous and Tim Holtz stamps, they're rubber stamps, they're gorgeous red rubber. And a stamp like this, as you can see, I've never even done it before, I'm just doing this to show you. They come pre-cut, but they're still in place, so they're cling, if I turn it the right way around. So on the back you will always get the printing of, it could be an image, in this case they're all sentiments. And this is obviously the stamp impression side, and they cling onto this sturdy plastic sheet that they come on, and this is also how I store them. I have mine in a bin, and I could just flick through them and see what's there and take them out when I need to use them. So usually what you do with one of these is you would take out the specific stamp set that you want, you take it out, and then it's whatever your preferred way of stamping is. So the easiest kind of a traditional way of doing it is with a stamp block. So I've got one here. You'd place it somewhere in that block. It will cling to anything that's kind of a sleek surface, and then you could see through it. You could kind of see exactly where you're going to be stamping. Well, not exactly, because that is sort of stuff you only achieve with see-through stamps, acrylic or photopolymer. But you could get a very good idea from the label that's printed on the back where you're going to stamp it on the page, and then obviously you choose your preferred ink. So I just got a couple of ink pads here. So distress oxidized, normal distress inks, your preferred other brand of stamping pads. For this one am going to be using Versaclear Fine, because some of these letters are quite detailed. So they're small, they're not like a big bold image, and I really want to get a very good impression. So VersaFine Clear is my current favorite ink for that sort of stuff. The Distress Oxides are absolutely wonderful. They would also work well with this, but you don't get as much of a crisp image. It's a different look, and particularly for sentiment stamps, I prefer if I can read the sentiment a little bit better, but they would still work really well, and I'll show you an example in a second. But for this I'm going to be using the VersaFine Clear. You could get it in different colors. I'm going to be using the Morning Mist, which is a lovely kind of grayish, well, it is grey, tone. And the hack comes in. So far it's just normal stamping, right? That's what you're thinking. What I'm going to do, so just to say, in case you're a beginner stamper, so as well as using the small acrylic blocks, you could also use a stamping platform. And actually, particularly on something like a sentiment, it might be where you do need to, obviously be able to read through quite correctly what the whole image. Some images work when it's a little bit distressed and you don't get to see the full image. I don't think that's quite the case with sentiments. You could also then use a stamping platform. So I've got my preferred one here. It's a model by Stamping Up. I've got a few of the My Sweet Petunia magnetic accessories, which mean that you don't have to budge against the corners. That's usually a little bit harder to stamp, and they're magnetic but also right angles, which means you can place your card and then you're always going to budge it against that. You don't even have to put a magnet on top, but obviously this comes with two very strong long magnets like this. Lots of other models available on the market. This is just an example, but you could do that. So instead of placing it on the small block there, imagining there's a piece of paper here, which I can actually use this one. So just remove magnets for a second. So you'd line it up to wherever you want. you now line up your stamp to where you want it to be on the page. And then once you lower the lid, it will automatically be there. It's going to be in the same place. The paper is also not going to move because it's budged up against that, and it's always going to be in that position. And if you're not familiar with this, the wonderful thing about stamping flat forms is if you think you're not very good at stamping because you don't have a lot of practice, or if you have dexterity issues or anything, for children it's wonderful as well. It's if I stamp it once, and when I put down the impression on paper, if it's not a very good impression, I could keep going. I could keep re-inking the stamp, pushing it down, and because it's in exactly the same position every single time, both the stamp and the paper, or whatever you're stamping onto, that means you're always going to get a good impression, and at the end of it, it's going to be just as bold as you want it to be, and just as detailed. So if for some reason it does miss a bit of the image being stamped correctly when you stamp it the first time, go a second time, a third time, until you're happy with the results. It's never going to go wrong on you, really. So these are the two traditional ways of using stamps, whether they're rubber stamps or any other type of stamp. So the little trick comes in that instead of doing that, I am going to do something different. I'm just going to work out which way around. Yeah, I need to put it like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this back in place where it was, and all of these are, if I bring it closer to the camera, hopefully you will be able to see, all of them are already kind of laser cut. Yeah, I don't know if you'll be able to see. You probably, if I do this and they begin to kind of fall apart a bit. So can you see, for example, here you can see that they're already laser cut, and you just peel them off. And usually you do that, you place it on the block, you stamp it. What I'm going to do instead is I will lay this flat on my surface, and I am going to choose the ink. In this case, I'm going to be using, like I said, the VersaFine Clear. I am going to go ahead and start inking this. So what I like to do is I like to, obviously, if you're brand new to stamping, tap, 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 kind of gently. You don't want to go in and squish things. With this type of pad, it's not so much of an issue, but some of them are really juicy, and if you do that, then it's just going to go all over, and it's probably going to ruin things when you try to get this down to paper. So I am going to ink all of it, and I'm tapping a couple of times, I suppose, in each area, and then I'm going to go again all over. The other reason I like to use VersaFine Clear is it's got a little bit more of an opening time, so as in it doesn't dry as quickly as some other products. So it's good for things like if you're going to use embossing powders, for example, on top of it, but also on something like this where you've got a big area and you want to make sure that all of it is covered. If it was something that dried very quickly, by the time you got to the bottom bit, the top would have been dried, and then you don't get a good impression. So I think that I've got pretty good coverage. And now, instead of taking this to my paper, which is the traditional way of doing it, I'm going to take the paper onto the stamp. So the only thing I need to now worry about, I'm not worried where in the page it's going to be. The page is a bit bigger than the stamp. I just need to be worried about not moving it once I place. I haven't yet made contact, but once the paper makes contact with the stamp, I'm going to try my best not to move it. So I'm just going to let it touch the paper, and now I'm going to hold with one hand, I'm going to hold the paper in place so that it doesn't move, and then with the other I'm just going to go around with the tips of my fingers. So I'm not doing this, I'm laying the fingers as flat as I can on the paper, and I'm just basically rubbing this in to make sure that there is full contact from the page onto the stamp. And obviously I'll then have to move this anchor hand a bit to make sure that where I was holding it before, I can now reach onto that and get adhesion in that area. I'm just going to do this a little bit more. You will see, don't want to rush this too much, because doing it this way you only really get one chance of getting this right. So if there were any words or anything that didn't quite transfer correctly, you're just going to have to live with that. It's not like when you use a see-through stamp with a block, or if you're using the stamp platform I just showed you where you can go several times. This is kind of it. So now I'm going to lift my paper, and I think that is pretty awesome. So what you now have, and obviously the second type second tip in this is I could have just used plain cardstock. So if I now just move the stamp to one side, I'll show you another piece that I had done before. I've already started cutting into this one. This is the second part of the hack that I'll show you. But you can see it was actually the same VersaFine Clair that I used here. This was just plain white cardstock. Not plain, as in it's a very nice cardstock. It's the best I found for stamping. It's a really good weight. It's not too heavy, not too flimsy, and it's got a really smooth finish, so it's perfect for stamping. But it's white, okay? It's plain white in color, whereas in this one that I've just done, if I bring it up close to the camera, you can see this is actually a printed bit of cardstock. This is kind of cardstock weight more than paper, and this gives you again a whole different effect really easily. So it's going to look like I've done something to the background to wink it up or something, particularly once I've cut it. I haven't, and it just adds to kind of this distressed look. So this should be kind of quite dry by now, but I don't want to take my chances and just start playing around with this too much. So I'm just going to put this to one side, but it's exactly the same principle. And I'm just going to show you where the other trick comes in. So I've now, in one go, I actually should have checked this beforehand, how many stamps are in this. I'm not sure, but I'll check it. And by the time I publish the video, I will say it in the descriptions and in the full detail article on my blog that I'll link to. I'll tell you exactly how many stamps, individual stamps you get. So obviously you can still use that, right? You can still grab whichever one of these stamps you want. If you're just doing a card or something where you just want one of these things, one of these sentiments on your project, by all means, go ahead, peel it off and stamp it as traditionally as you would. This is just to show you how I like to do it, because actually I could use a lot of these sentiments interchangeably. As in, if I'm trying to do an encouragement card for a friend, for example, there's lots of things that I could choose from. It doesn't have to be one in particular. And what I really like is what I do with these. So I've got, there's two ways you can do this. If you don't have guillotines or trimmers at hand, you could just use your scissors. And actually, because it's sentiments, even though they have different fonts, so some are all caps, some are small caps, it's fairly easy, even if you're not very good at cutting things by hand. It's fairly easy to kind of see how you can get a more or less straight line when you're cutting. I don't like to do that. I don't mind cutting them once, so kind of between the sentiments, once I've got a strip that's been cut off. But I much prefer to just get it over with and just do strips horizontally across the paper. So I've got a few different trimmers that I keep at hand. This one is the one I'm going to use at the end, actually. So I would just get a trimmer that is big enough to fit the size page that I've just printed. And obviously, I'm stating the obvious, but you could do a full A4 sheet. You could do a smaller piece of, if you have a bit of spare printed design on a piece of card. You don't have to do a full A4 size. You could just pick whichever bit of the stamp you want and place the paper in there. So what I like to do is I'm going to turn it sideways, yeah? So the blade of the guillotine is on this side, and now I can just, if you could hopefully still see, I'm just going to line up. So I know that I want it to be kind of in between the two rows of sentiments there, so it's kind of more or less the same distance. It doesn't really matter. And when you do your first cut, you want to check. In this case, it's really good. So actually all the way around, this is quite straight. If it wasn't, then this is when you'd want to line things up. And then from that first cut, you can turn it around and keep straightening the edges. You only have to do that once. And then once your piece of card has got straight edges, then you just know you're always going to budge it against the edge there. And the only thing you have to worry about is how far are you getting the blades to cut in between the two rows of sentiment. So I think if I do it about there, it's going to be good. And just like that, I've got an entire row. In this case, it's two fairly long sentiments. Let life surprise you, and the journey is the destination. So now, at this stage, what I tend to do is I just sit in front of the TV when I've got nothing else to do and I'm just a bit tired, and I find it quite relaxing to be doing this. And now I feel quite confident coming in with my scissors and just snipping in, because it's just from the bottom to the top or vice versa, and it's fairly easy to get the sense that I'm cutting straight. I cut straight and that's it, and I can then decide how much of a white space I want at the edges of each of these, and then I just keep doing that. So fairly relaxing if you just want to do that. If not, that's when my mini trimmer comes in. I could totally do this with this one, okay? It's just that I'm spoiled and I've got a few different tools, so I like to use them. If a tool does the job better than the other one, why not? So at this stage is where I will use the smaller trimmer. So in this case, actually, this is just wide enough that it will fit this one. So I'm just going to cut one more strip here just to show you what I mean. So the initial strip I cut by hand with a pair of scissors. This one, this new one, it's got 3 sentiments. Love you to the moon and back, hello friend, and in my heart. And now what I do, now I place it this way, again against the edge of the guillotine, and then I'm going to do exactly the same thing. So now I know that I probably can't show you very well here, but I know that that's going to cut my sentiment where I want that. So I do that. I've got 1 sentiment there, and then I just keep going. And all you have to do is this backwards and forwards movement. So what I would advise you to do is you cut all of your horizontal strips first. Once you have all the strips in there, then you could just place them in here and just keep cutting, and then you put another one, and so on and so forth, and you just keep doing like that. So 2 different ways where you can, cutting by hand or with guillotines or trimmers, whatever your favorite method is. And then this is kind of the purpose of all of this, and I've just kind of made a mess because I turned the box upside down. I'm gonna have to open the lid and live with a mess. But I've got this box that I usually keep upright, or as in laying flat, so that this doesn't happen, but and I've got, so you could do it by color, and I just want to show you this. So these sentiments here, just to show you, they were actually done with one of the Distress Oxide ink pads. So just to show you that you still get a pretty good impression. It's just, it's not typically as sharp. So if it's small detail areas, I prefer the VersaFine, but you could still get, really, really good results. So you could do, this was plain white paper with that colored ink, or you could do the opposite. You could have, like I did on this example I did with you, you could have this paper with a plain ink, like a gray or a black ink, but you're stamping it onto an already printed design, or any other of those combinations. So any color of cardstock, any color of ink that you wish to choose. And then I just had these, I'm going to have to do this again, but I just had them in terms of size of the strips, and that's how these dividers work. You could do it by color. I'm not really fussed on the color. I just think it's more like if I have a card and I want a sentiment that is quite short, I think I find it easier to look for things like that. So these would be quite short ones. These are kind of medium, and then these are my longer strips. And all of them would fit this longer one. There aren't any that don't fit. This is just regular box that I had before for beads and things like that. I took the slots, repurposed them, kind of replaced them where I wanted so I could repurpose it. Use whatever. You could just use an envelope. You don't need to go and buy a box. I just happen to have one. I'm just going to randomly put this here now, and then I'll sort this later. But what this means is I always have a stack of sentiments. And if you do it with quite neutral colors, and you'll know which colors you tend to use more anyway, but if you do it with a neutral one, like the gray, the black, possibly a beige or a brown color, that means it's probably going to go with most of the projects you have. I tend to use like this faded pink quite a lot, which is why I decided I wanted to do that. And then I've always got them, so if I'm in the middle of a project and all I want to now do is add a sentiment, I don't need to go and grab my stamps and stamp and inks and all of that and stamp them and cut them and blah blah blah. I just have it all ready, and I could just pick the sentiment that best fits that page, if it's a scrapbook page or a greeting card or my own journal. And that's it. It's really then quick to create things because you've kind of done all of that work. It's still fun to stamp, but I much prefer picking a stamp and then placing it on my finished project and seeing the end result immediately than having to go through all of the stages every time you're creating something. So just to wrap up the video, I'm just going to show you, and I'll link, I will do a video of how I made these, and then I'll come back to this and I'll link it to that. This is just using dies and paper and some leftover kind of faux leather strips that I had. This is just elastic. And this is using primarily a set of Stamperia papers. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's kind of an oriental themed thing. I will put the link in the description, in the details in my blog. And this is a gorgeous stencil and I think some tonic glitter paste. I will get all of the details listed up, but I just want to show you how I've used it. So I had the paper, I used a die to cut all the pages, and then I just went through and I had a whole bunch of these are some oh gosh, what's the name? Some not stickers, probably shouting at the video now, telling me what the name is. So anyway, so they're die cut elements, but they're quite thick. Chipboard, that's it. Chipboard embellishments. And it's all from the same Stamperia line. I added these, and then I picked through a sentiment that I thought went well with that section. So in this case, I've got a lucky elephant in there, and I've put lucky is a state of mind for that one. Some of them I haven't necessarily used sentiment, so this is just one of the paper elements that I've stuck in there. This is one of the Stamperia own stickers, but then here I've put Find Joy in the Ordinary. So some of my favorite ones I've put in this book, which I haven't quite decided what I'm going to use it for, probably for, you know, inspirational quotes and things like that. But I thought this, you know, this was a special project for me to make. I really enjoyed all of the process and the papers and materials I've used. So I wanted to pick some of my favorite stamps and sentiments to go along with that. So in here I've got two of them. I've got Let Life Surprise You and The Journey as a destination. The world needs who you were made to be. So just really some uplifting, inspirational quotes there. You get a little bit of everything in this stamp set. Like I said, you could use this very easily for greeting cards. I think you can even adapt. There's nothing in here that says happy birthday, but I'm sure there's things in here that you could repurpose for a birthday or a special occasion card, and it's absolutely perfect for journaling, for scrapbooking, for keeping an inspirational quotes journal and things like that. The second way I've used it is my lovely Heidi Swap Memory Decks card spinner, and I've used it in here. So I had this is basically, I put this together in like a minute because I had all of these little stars glittered up, so they were already cut, already glittered them, and I had the sentiments already in the box. I just cut the piece of card, and I've got another video if you're interested in knowing the dimensions that you need to use for the Memory Decks system. You know, I just cut it, I rounded the corners, I used the corner punch the Heidi Swap corner punch. I stuck these on top, and that was it. So literally kind of a minute to put it together, and it's stunning. And now I've got it there, and you know, it's on my craft desk all the time, and obviously I've done that with a few of them. So this is another one, focus on the good, and it's all about perspective. And then I've got this, which is that one I've used before, the lucky is a state of mind. And I think this is my final tip, is when you get the sentiment, obviously it's going to be printed all together. And what I've done here is actually, if the layout of the page doesn't allow for it, or it wouldn't look very nice, it would still fit, but it wouldn't look very nice if it's edge to edge. I wanted something to occupy this space and to be tiered up. You can, right? scissors to hand or trimmer, or however you want to cut them. You can even rough cut them if you like that look as well. And that's it. You know, you can make it as wide or not as you want. You can play around with the distance from the edges of the letters and things like that. Yeah, and I hope you found this kind of an inspirational idea on how you could, I guess, get ahead in terms of having a little stash of sentiments ready to go. I'd said I'd tell you why I love the stamp set so much. I've kind of already talked about some of it. So first of all, the value for money is absolutely phenomenal. I will count how many stamps are in here, individual sentiments are in here, and I'll confirm that. But I mean, you could tell, right? So, you know, you've got, in some lines you've got 2, in some lines you've got 3, in some lines you might have 4 smaller sentiments, and you've got quite a few rows of them. So it's the price of a normal stamp size of this size, and if you were going to get the same amount of sentiments but in several sets, it would definitely cost you a lot more money. And then the fact that you can do this, right? You don't need to cut each of them to stamp, each one of them individually. You could just keep this thing where it is, put the paper on top and stamp it that way. You don't need to be worried about whether you're going to position it right and things like that, and then you're going to sort out cutting all of your bits afterwards, and I find that quite relaxing. I don't know, some people might not like that, in which case, you know, use your favorite trimmer or guillotine. But this way you have a stack ready, and it's just, it helps me with my creativity to flow, particularly if I'm on a day where I don't feel so inspired to craft. If I really got everything I need, I could just look at them, I could just take them out of the box, I could say, oh, I quite like this sentiment, and then I'll find something and I'll think, oh, you know, believe in yourself. That might prompt me to think, oh, I had a stamp image that would go really well with this, or I just want to do a background with watercolors and then just stamp this and that will be enough. You know, it for me, when I'm stuck and my creative mojo is gone a bit, it really helps me to be surrounded by beautiful things and to be touching them and organizing them and looking at them. And I think this is an easier way to then get creating, because if I had to now, I might pick a stamp set, a sentiment that I like in the stamp set, but then I'd have to go, you know, sit at my craft desk, look for the right ink, look for the right paper, all of those things. And if I'm not really in the mood, I end up not doing it. Whereas if I really have things lined up, I just find that that helps with the creative process. So I hope you found it useful. I hope it helps you as well. And if you like this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to my channel. And until next time, take care. Bye.